The galaxy was old, filled with proud civilizations that had ruled for thousands of years. Great empires sat in shining halls of crystal and steel, believing they understood every corner of the stars. Yet in one dark chamber far from the light, a meeting was held in whispers. The council of elder races had gathered. They were worried. They were afraid. At the center of the chamber, a hologram of a small blue planet turned slowly. It looked fragile compared to the burning suns around it. The planet was covered in water and dirt. The elder races called it dirt, and those who lived there they mocked with a simple name, the Dirtlings. The name brought laughter at first. It sounded weak. It sounded unworthy of fear. But the reports that followed were not weak at all. The more the council read, the more silent the chamber became. Impossible, one alien whispered with long, sharp teeth. They should not have survived past their stone age. Another slammed a heavy hand against the table. Yet they did. And not only survived, they spread. The reports told of strange things. Dirtlings could breathe air filled with poison that killed others. They could live in deserts with burning heat or on frozen mountains where no other creature dared to go. Their bodies broke, yet they stood again. Their wars were endless, brutal, and bloody. But instead of dying out, they grew stronger. The council studied images of them, fragile beings with soft skin, small eyes, and bodies that looked weak compared to the armored scales and hard shells of other species. They had no claws, no natural armor, no venom. Their world should have destroyed them long ago. "Why do they live still?" asked one elder with gray skin like stone. No one answered. The chamber grew tense as the head of the council spoke. His voice was low and heavy. "Our scouts were sent to watch the Dirtlings. None have returned." This news shook the chamber. The scouts were the finest hunters in the galaxy. They had tracked species across black holes and storms. Yet against the Dirtlings they had vanished without a single signal. One counselor hissed, "Perhaps they were killed." Another replied, "Perhaps they joined them." Silence followed. The idea was unthinkable. No one joined lesser races. No one abandoned the elder bloodlines. Yet the Dirtlings created questions no one wanted to ask. The hologram changed. Now it showed images of Dirtlings fighting wars. The council saw them in iron armor, swinging sharp blades against machines. They saw them firing powder weapons at ships that should have crushed them. They saw them screaming as they ran into battle even when death was certain. It made the chamber uneasy. "They fight without reason," said one elder. "No," another corrected. "They fight for reasons we cannot understand." The fear grew. The Dirtlings were not supposed to exist. Their planet was unstable. Their history was filled with endless killing. By all logic, they should have destroyed themselves long ago. And yet, they had not. The head of the council turned off the hologram. The room fell into darkness except for the cold glow of his eyes. "We must know more. We must test them. If they are a danger, we must end them now before they spread further." And so, a fleet was sent. Across the stars, sleek ships left their shining docks. They carried weapons strong enough to burn entire worlds. Their mission was simple: study the Dirtlings and, if necessary, erase them from existence. As the fleet moved closer to the blue planet, the commanders expected an easy task. How could such weak creatures resist the fire of the elder races? But deep in their hearts, hidden in the silence of space, even the strongest commanders felt something strange. Something heavy. It was not logic. It was not proof. It was a feeling. The Dirtlings, fragile as they were, carried a shadow with them. A shadow older and darker than anyone could explain. And as the fleet came near, the galaxy held its breath, because sometimes the smallest fire can burn the largest empire. The alien fleet entered Earth's orbit in silence. Dozens of ships floated above the blue planet, their silver hulls glowing like knives in the sunlight. From the ground below, no human noticed. The humans were too busy with their own struggles, arguing in governments, fighting small wars, chasing dreams, and surviving storms. To them, the sky was empty. But to the fleet, the sky was crowded with danger. The commander of the fleet, a tall being with skin like dark iron, looked down on the planet. His eyes narrowed. To him, the Dirtlings were nothing more than insects. "This will be simple," he said to his officers. "We will capture a few, test their limits, and return to the council with answers." The officers nodded. They had conquered countless worlds before. They believed this would be no different. But the Dirtlings were not like the others. The first landing craft touched the ground in a quiet forest. The air smelled of wet leaves and smoke from a nearby human campfire. The soldiers stepped out tall and armored, their weapons humming with energy. They expected screams. They expected fear. Instead, they saw 3 human soldiers by the fire. The humans froze, staring at the strange figures. For a moment, both sides stood still. Then, without waiting for orders, one human lifted his old rifle and fired. The bullet tore through the air and slammed into the alien soldier's chest. The armor cracked. The alien stumbled back. The humans shouted to each other and opened fire again. The aliens returned with bright beams of light that cut through trees and soil. The forest burned. One by one, the humans fell. Their weapons were weak compared to alien fire. Their bodies broke. But the last human, the one who fired first, refused to stay down. His chest was burned, his arm shattered, yet he crawled forward with the rifle in his good hand. He fired again. The alien stared in silence as the wounded dirtling dragged himself closer, coughing blood but still fighting. He should have died minutes ago. He should have surrendered, but he kept going until his final breath. When the human finally lay still, his hand still gripped the rifle. His eyes remained open, locked on the enemy. The alien commander whispered, "What kind of creature refuses death?" The soldiers collected samples and returned to the ship. Their report was not what the commander expected. "They fight when they cannot win," one soldier said. "They fight when their bodies are broken. They fight until there is nothing left to fight with." The commander did not believe it at first, but more landings brought the same result. Farmers defending their land with rusted tools, miners swinging hammers at armored invaders, mothers shielding children with bare hands while wounded fathers fought until their last breath. It was madness. No other race acted this way. The fleet tried a different test. In a remote desert, they captured a group of humans alive. They locked them inside a chamber with no food, no water, no light. Most species broke in days. Most gave up hope. But the humans sang songs to each other. They scratched messages into the walls. They planned escapes even when none were possible. One human starved to death, but his last words were whispered to the others. "Do not give up." The aliens watched in disbelief. Even in despair, the Dirtlings clung to something invisible. Hope. The commander began to understand what the council feared. It was not the Dirtlings' weapons. It was not their bodies. It was their refusal to stop. Weeks passed. The fleet grew restless. Soldiers whispered of curses. Some refused to land on Earth again. They said the Dirtlings were not just fighters, they were a sickness. A sickness that spread fear. Then came the breaking point. One alien patrol tried to capture a human village in the mountains. The villagers had nothing but axes and old hunting rifles. The aliens had full armor, energy cannons, and shields. Victory should have been instant. But when the aliens entered the village, every human rose to fight. Men, women, even children threw stones and knives. The aliens fired back, expecting the humans to run. But none ran. They fought until the last villager was gone. The patrol returned in silence. Not one alien spoke. The commander asked what happened, but no one could answer. Their eyes were wide with something they could not name. It was fear. The fleet withdrew from orbit. From space, Earth looked peaceful, covered in blue seas and white clouds. Yet to the aliens, it now looked like a trap. The commander sent one final message to the council. The Dirtlings cannot be broken. Their bodies are weak, but their spirit is unshakable. I fear we have awakened something we do not understand. The fleet turned away, leaving Earth behind. But their fear did not fade. It grew. Across the stars, whispers began. Whispers of a fragile race from dirt. A race that fought until the end. A race that refused to kneel. The whispers had only one name for them: humans. The message from the fleet spread faster than light. Across trade routes, marketplaces, and military halls, one phrase was repeated again and again. The Dirtlings cannot be broken. At first, many laughed. How could soft creatures from a small blue planet frighten the great empires? They mocked the fleet that had failed. They said the commanders had grown weak. They said the Dirtlings were nothing more than primitive fighters lucky enough to catch their enemies by surprise. But soon, new stories began to appear. And each one was stranger than the last. In a mining colony on the edge of the stars, a group of human workers was trapped after a gas explosion. The mine filled with poison. Any other species would have died in hours. The rescuers expected to find only corpses. But when they broke through the tunnels, they found the humans alive, pale, coughing, but alive. They had tied wet cloth to their faces, shared the little clean air, and kept each other breathing. One alien rescuer whispered in fear. They adapted inside the gas. They should have been dead. The story spread like fire. Soon another tale followed. A raiding crew attacked a small human freighter expecting easy loot. The aliens boarded with plasma weapons cutting through walls. The humans fought with nothing but tools. Wrenches, axes, even bare fists. The aliens killed many, but the survivors did something unthinkable. They trapped the raiders in the cargo hold, sealed the doors, and vented the air. The humans knew the blast would kill them too, but they pulled the lever anyway. The freighter was found drifting later. Every alien raider dead, several humans still alive, frozen and half dead, but breathing weakly when rescued. This time there was no laughter. The whispers grew darker. Merchants avoided human worlds. Soldiers refused missions near their borders. Commanders began to question whether the Dirtlings were truly fragile at all, or if they were something else entirely. On a distant world, a scholar of war gathered records of every human battle. He read about their history. Wars fought with iron swords, with arrows, with fire, with tanks, with machines, with bombs that shook the earth itself. Other races fought wars until exhaustion ended them. Humans fought until their world burned, and then fought again in the ashes. The scholar closed his books in silence and warned his students, if they carry their history into the stars, none of us are safe. More reports came in. A pirate gang tried to starve a human colony by blocking supply ships. For 3 months, no food arrived. No water, no medicine. But when the pirates finally broke through the colony gates expecting to find weakness, they found something else. The humans had survived on roots, on insects, on anything their hands could dig up. They looked thin, sick, half dead. Yet when the pirates entered, those thin humans attacked with fury. The pirates fled. One of the survivors later wrote a single line that spread across alien networks. We do not starve. We endure. The phrase became a nightmare. Some said humans could live without food for weeks, without water for days, without air for minutes, longer than any species in the council. Others whispered that humans did not just endure suffering, they grew stronger from it. The rumors reached even the thrones of great empires. In the halls of the warlords, questions were asked in quiet voices. What if the Dirtlings multiplied? What if they spread beyond their small planet? What if they reached the heart of the galaxy? One general dismissed the fear. They are nothing. They can be crushed. But another older commander shook his head. You do not understand. They are not feared because they win. They are feared because they do not stop losing. This statement confused many, but it soon made sense. The Dirtlings did not need victory to be dangerous. They needed only survival. Every loss made them harder, colder, and more determined. It was said that even their dead frightened enemies. In one raid, an alien warrior found himself face to face with a dying human soldier. The soldier's body was broken, yet he smiled with blood on his lips and whispered, "You are next." The alien fled the battlefield and never fought again. By now, fear had spread like a sickness. Soldiers spoke of the Dirtlings at night, imagining their faces in the dark. Traders changed routes to avoid human colonies. Children of other species played games pretending to fight the humans and always losing. The Dirtlings had become more than a species. They had become a legend. The council gathered once more. Voices were louder this time. Some demanded an immediate strike to wipe the Dirtlings from history before it was too late. Others argued that such a strike might fail, and if it failed, the Dirtlings would rise stronger. The head of the council listened in silence. His face was hard as stone. Finally, he said, "We face a danger unlike any before. They are not fast, not strong, not wise, yet they carry something that breaks all logic. We cannot measure it. We cannot fight it. We cannot understand it." One voice in the chamber whispered the word none wanted to speak. Hope. The chamber fell silent. And far away, on the blue planet of dirt, the humans continued their lives without knowing the shadow they had cast across the stars. They worked, they fought, they dreamed. They had no idea that the galaxy trembled at the sound of their name. The council could not rest. Whispers of the Dirtlings had turned into fear, and fear had turned into obsession. The galaxy's oldest races wanted answers. If the Dirtlings could not be broken, then there had to be a reason. and if there was a reason, it could be found, cut open, and studied. So they captured one. It happened in the silence of space. A human cargo ship was pulled from its course by hidden gravity nets. The crew fought as humans always did, but against overwhelming power they were defeated. Most were killed. One was taken alive. The prisoner was brought to a hidden laboratory on a barren moon. The alien scientist looked at him through thick glass walls. He looked so ordinary, so fragile. His skin tore easily. His bones were thin compared to the armored skeletons of other races. His heart beat unevenly, showing weakness. "Is this what terrifies us?" one scientist muttered. "This soft thing?" But still they began their work. They scanned his body layer by layer. They tested his blood, his cells, his mind. They cut small pieces of tissue and studied them under endless machines. They searched for secret glands, hidden weapons, or strange energies. They found nothing. The human body was simple, weak, flawed. By every measure, it should have failed long ago. Yet when the experiments pushed him to the edge, the scientists saw something that froze them in place. The human did not beg. He did not scream. Even when his body shook with pain, he stared at his captors with steady eyes. He whispered words they could not understand, words from his own language, but the tone carried through the walls. It was not a plea. It was a promise. He said it again and again. The translators finally cracked the meaning. "I will not give you what you want." The aliens increased the pressure. They drained his blood and replaced it. They burned his skin and healed it again. They starved him, froze him, and drowned him in simulations. Any other species would have broken. The human did not. At night, when the scientists watched him through the glass, they saw him drawing with his finger on the cold wall. Simple shapes. Circles, stars, the outline of a small face. At first they thought it was madness. But then they realized he was drawing his family. He was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for them, the scientists argued. Some said this was proof of hidden strength in the human body. Others said no, the strength was in his mind. Still others whispered that maybe it was something greater, something that could not be measured by any machine. One day, a scientist stepped into the chamber alone. He asked the human, "Why do you endure? Why do you resist when you cannot win?" The human looked at him. His voice was weak, but his words were sharp. "Because losing is not the same as giving up." The answer struck the scientist harder than any weapon. He left the chamber in silence and did not return. Days later, the council demanded results. The head scientist stood before them, trembling. "We have found no special organ, no hidden power. They are flesh, bone, and blood like any other. But they carry something invisible, a force that cannot be cut open or burned away." The council pressed him. "What force?" The scientist struggled for words. Finally, he whispered, "Will." The chamber erupted. Some laughed, calling it superstition. Others fell silent, remembering stories of Dirtlings crawling back from death, starving for weeks, fighting without hope. The head of the council closed his eyes. Deep down, he knew it was true. The Dirtlings had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. What they had instead was more terrifying: the refusal to stop. The human prisoner was executed. His body was destroyed to hide the shame of their failure, but his last act remained in memory. As the fire consumed him, he smiled. Not in victory, but in defiance. The scientist who had spoken to him resigned soon after. Before he vanished into exile, he left behind a single message. "You cannot defeat them because they do not fight for survival alone. They fight for meaning, and meaning cannot die." The words spread in secret. Soldiers repeated them in dark barracks. Traders whispered them on long journeys. Even among the proud elder races, the thought would not go away. Perhaps the Dirtlings were not strong because of what they were made of. Perhaps they were strong because of what they believed, and that belief was spreading faster than their ships. The galaxy trembled. The council chamber was darker than before. The air felt heavy, as if the stars themselves pressed down on the room. Around the great table, the oldest rulers of the galaxy gathered once more. Their faces were tense. Their voices were sharp. The subject was the same as always. The Dirtlings. Reports had flooded in from every corner of space. Stories of human miners who survived explosions, farmers who fought invaders with nothing but fire, soldiers who kept moving even with broken bodies, traders who risked death to save strangers. The Dirtlings were no longer just a curiosity. They were a question that no one could answer, Some counselors shouted for war. "Burn them now," one said, his eyes glowing red. "Wipe their world clean before they rise any further." Others shook their heads. "We tried," another said softly. "A fleet was sent." They returned in fear. "You cannot burn a people who refuse to accept fire." The room grew restless. The words of the scientists still haunted them. The Dirtlings carry no secret power. Their strength is their will. But how do you fight will? An elder with silver skin, old enough to remember the first wars of the galaxy, spoke at last. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber. "You fear them because they are what we are not. Long ago our races stopped struggling. We grew safe, soft, and proud. We lost the fire to suffer and still rise. The Dirtlings still have that fire. That is why you tremble." The chamber fell into silence. The head of the council leaned forward. His face was grim. "Then the truth is clear. The Dirtlings are not dangerous because of what they have. They are dangerous because of what they remind us of," another voice whispered, almost shaking. "And what is that?" The head of the council answered, "They remind us of ourselves before we grew weak." No one spoke after that. Outside the chamber, the galaxy was already changing. Alien traders noticed human ships spreading further, reaching new stars. Colonies grew on barren worlds where no other species could live. Where the ground was too cold, humans built fires. Where the air was too thin, they made shelters. Where storms tore down walls, they rebuilt with stronger hands. They were not fast. They were not many. But they never stopped. And as they spread, the fear spread with them. Soldiers who faced humans once refused to face them again. Commanders hesitated before giving orders against them. Even the bravest generals avoided speaking the word Dirtlings aloud. The humans themselves did not know the legend being built around them. They did not know their stubbornness was shaking empires. They only lived as they always had, fighting, building, protecting, and enduring. But the galaxy knew. On one world, a child of another race asked his father, "Are the Dirtlings real?" The father whispered, "Yes." "And pray you never meet one." On another world, a dying soldier told his commander, "Do not send me against the humans. Their eyes, they do not break." In the hidden corners of the galaxy, some races even began to admire the Dirtlings, not because they were strong, but because they were alive in a way others had forgotten. The council met again one final time. Some still demanded war. Others begged for peace. But one elder, older than the rest, ended the debate with words none could forget. "It does not matter what we choose," he said. "It is already too late. The Dirtlings will walk among the stars. They will face every world, every danger, every enemy, and they will not stop. You cannot fight something that turns pain into strength. You cannot win against a people who do not understand surrender." The chamber fell silent once more. The truth was too heavy to fight. Far away on their small blue planet, the humans looked up at the night sky. To them, the stars were not places of fear. They were invitations. They dreamed of walking there, of reaching further, of never stopping. And one day they would. When that day came, the galaxy would remember this moment. The warnings, the whispers, the fear. And the galaxy would finally understand the meaning of the name they had once mocked. The Dirtlings, or as they called themselves, humans.